Willkommen beim Ziegelei Akademie Podcast, dem Ort, an dem Kreativität, Innovation und Musik sich vereinen. Hier gestalten wir nicht nur Musik, sondern wir bringen Leben in ein historisches Gebäude. Unsere Vision ist eine Musikhochschule, die in der alten Ziegeleifabrik in Sinsheim entstehen soll. Begleite uns auf dieser aufregenden Reise und erhalte exklusive Einblicke hinter die Kulissen der Musikwelt. Egal ob du Musikerin oder einfach nur Musikfan bist, freue dich auf spannende Interviews, inspirierende Gäste und top-aktuelle News. Wir öffnen die Tore zur Musikwelt, also trete ein in unsere Kreativfabrik, hier beim Ziegelei Akademie Podcast mit deinen Hosts Jenny und Sherry. Hallo zusammen, die heutige Podcast-Folge ist eine Aufzeichnung von unserem Music Roundtable und hier hatten wir einen Special Guest, nämlich Weltklasse Gitarrist Rod Castro, der schon auf der Bühne war mit Bebe Rexha, Beyoncé, Ellie Goulding, Natasha Bedingfield und so weiter. Also er spielt in der Top-Liga der Musiker und er erzählt euch von seinen Erfahrungen, gibt euch viele wertvolle Tipps mit, also bleibt dran. Hello and welcome to our music roundtable.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being there. I will also introduce you, but I would first introduce quickly ourselves so that you guys know, or that you also know who we are. So we are called the Ziegelei Academy, which is a German name. And to show you like what we are, who we are, I hope you can see that. I'm not sure. Can you see that? Maybe now.
Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Just to give you a quick picture who we are. This is the building we want to transform into a music university. It's an old brick factory here in our region in Sinsheim, close to Mannheim, Frankfurt. And our goal is really to help DIY artists to build a successful music career here in Germany and also to hopefully get success internationally. And this is why we that's why we've started the Roundtable, which is our also online music community. Why? Because we said we need also support in a network where we can just exchange information with like-minded people and also with experts. And that's why we always invite experts to get to know how they got to a successful music career. And that's why I'm very, very happy to have a very special guest here today. And we actually met in 2019 in LA when I went to visit a jam session in a really nice live music venue in LA. And I was really fascinated by a really great guitar player up there on stage. And I had a chance to get to talk to him. And I found out that he's not just an amazing guitarist, he's also on stage with the greatest artists in the world, such as Bebe Rexha, Natasha Bedingfield, Beyoncé, and so on. And I was very impressed about his career, but I was also I could witness how great he was on stage. So I could understand why he's on stage with all those great artists. So please let me welcome Rod Castro.
Hello.
Hey, Rod.
Wow, that's crazy. That was 5 years ago. That's
right.
It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it's crazy that it was that long ago.
Yeah, but COVID doesn't count.
Yeah, I feel like we should all get at least 3 years back on our age.
Right? I feel so too.
Reverse that time.
Maybe if we're lucky.
Good to see you again, and nice to meet you, Jenny, as well. Thanks for having me. That's so cool that you guys are turning this factory into a university. That's crazy. That would never happen here in LA. So it's really cool that exists. Mainly because people wouldn't be able to buy a building because buildings cost like tens of millions of dollars here. So congratulations to you guys. Real quick before we start, the name of your academy, what does it mean?
Ziegelei is the German word for brick factory. So that's where they used to build bricks.
Oh, that's so cool. So Brick Factory Music Academy. That's really cool.
So we kind of kept the name.
It's pronounced Ziegelei?
Very good.
Okay, cool. That's so cool. All right. I just wanted to know that. Thank you.
So hopefully when you're in Germany, we get to show you around.
Yeah. So do you guys like own the building already or are leasing the building or?
No, we are in very good contact with the owner of the building, and we have an office inside the building. It has 100 square meters, And that's where we start for now. And the goal is to get an investor in because it's really a million project. So it's very expensive to renew the building. It's very old. It hasn't been in use for 60 years now. So we need a big investor to help us to set this up. That's why we also start online and step by step, or how we say, brick by brick, we want to build that university.
That's so cool. Well, congrats, and I wish you guys the best with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now also to come to you, as I said, you're a very successful musician. My first question is, of course, how you become such a successful musician? Like, what was your path? How did it look?
So that's always like a loaded question. I'm not gonna get too deep, but like I always like I don't I feel like it's hard for me to consider myself a successful musician just because I feel like everyone's barometer and definition of success is very different. I also am like the kind of person that like I don't take moments to really stop and look at what I've done and sort of my accomplishments and my accolades. I'm just like, well, I have a family support, so I have to keep working. It's like I never stop and like smell the flowers of my career. But yeah, I started out playing in like punk and metal bands as a kid, and never in like my wildest dreams did I think that I would become a pop guitarist and work with the artists and the level that I do. I have no musical background as far as education goes. I never went to school for music. I never took theory. I still don't know theory. I don't know how to read. Everything's just like by my ears. Like if I hear something, I kind of know how to play it. As long as it's not anything too crazy. I can't do jazz. That stuff really just makes no sense to me. And I'm not really a country player either. Like I feel like when I get called to do like country stuff, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not the guy for that. But I started out in like rock bands and punk bands as a kid. And I started getting into writing for, you know, all the bands that I was in. And then when I was 19, I joined a band with an actor. His name was Tom Sizemore. He recently passed away, but he was a very pretty prominent actor in the 90s and early 2000s. And I was writing the music for that band, and we did a record. And when we did the record, they brought in a session drummer and like a producer and stuff. And the producer was like a musician that I was a big fan of that was in a bunch of bands that I liked growing up. And when I was working with these session players on those records, they were kind of just like, I became good friends with them, and they pulled me aside and they were like, hey, you know, you're pretty good. Like you should be doing music for a living. Like you should be like a session guitarist. And I was like, I have no idea how to do that. Like, what do I do? How do I even start? And they're just like, all you have to do is learn songs or come up with parts in the studio. They're like, there's an artist that I'm playing with coming up, and they need a guitar player. So they'll just send you the music, you learn it, and you play it, and that's it. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I do that for free in my room every day of my life. I'll do that for a job, you know? So he started recommending me for gigs, and they were happy with it. And so I kind of just started doing a lot of local gigs, playing for a bunch of different people. And so the band that I started out in, like my first band, the drummer in that band ended up becoming a recording engineer long after the band broke up. And I started getting more into studio work. I was a single father when I was really young, so I couldn't travel for work. And so I was just doing studio work and local gigs. And so the drummer became an engineer. There was a studio that I was working at a lot, and he was looking to kind of become a more serious engineer, wanted to work in a real studio. The engineer quit at the studio that I was working at, and I recommended him. And I was like, this guy's great. You know, I think he's going to do an amazing job. You got to bring him on board. So he got the job there. And within, I want to say a year and a half or 2 years, he engineered Beyonce's Lemonade, won a Grammy, and was just crushing it. They loved him. They took him from the studio, and he became, you know, her engineer and the MD's right-hand man for a really long time. And at this point, I'd kind of started building my career. I was playing at Sayers and stuff like that, but I hadn't really had like a big gig or a big break. I was just working consistently, which is obviously great, and I'm grateful for it. But like in end of 2018, Beyonce had just finished her On the Run 2 tour, and she had a show coming up where they needed to pre-record guitars. Like she was just going to play the pre-recorded music for that show, and I got brought in. My friend, who was the engineer who got that gig, brought me on board. I went into the studio to record my parts, and they really liked it. And then they decided she wanted to do it live, and they asked me to do it, and so I did. And I it's actually a funny story. They recommended me saying that I was a classically trained acoustic guitar player, which I'm not. So I was having to play with an orchestra. I was having to play classical music that I've never played in my life, and I had to just BS my way through all of it. And I was so nervous. I was like, they're gonna think I'm a fraud. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. And they liked it. And so I just, after that show, they kept me around, and I started playing on her records. I started playing with her live. I was with her for like 5 years after that. And then once I got that gig and I kind of was like announced, and it was like, oh, I'm playing with this person now. I'm playing on her records now. Then like so many gigs came in, like almost immediately. People were recommending me for everything. Every gig I have is someone recommended me for it. I've never auditioned for a gig. I've never sought out a gig. It was just all my friends and my peers who were like involved in something cool that they're like, hey, we need a guitar player. Everyone's just like, call Rod, call Rod. So my phone just hasn't stopped ringing since. And it's been like 6 years now. So I would say that every gig I have and every opportunity I have has just been from really good friends referring me for stuff. And then I try to return the favor every chance I can. And it's just been very much a community friendship thing.
Wow, very impressive. I didn't know that it's kind of just 6 years, but because your career path, when I look at it, it looks like 20 years. So I guess you were just busy all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. It was it was a very slow build. Because I couldn't travel, um, I felt like I was really limited in what I could do. And luckily my fiance now, she's an incredible partner and we have a 3-year old, and she's an incredible stepmom to my older son, who I was raising on my own at first. And she's the reason I'm able to travel and work so much, because she can stay at home with the kids. So
Wow.
that's a big part of my success as well, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for her. So there's a saying, it takes a village, and it's very true. I wouldn't be able to do that without her and everyone else who's referred me for stuff. So it's been
Oh, nice.
a long but amazing journey. But like, yeah, all the craziness in my career has really only been in the last 6 years.
Wow, very impressive. So now I hear why you are so busy and just on the road all the time. So
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
right now I'm juggling like 6 artists live right now,
Mm.
and I still do a lot of studio work. Like I've been home the last 2 weeks, but I've been in the studio like every day. So it's pretty exhausting. I had 3 sessions yesterday. I've been like at least one a day since, and hopefully I'm like done for the next 2 days before I leave. I don't want to have to do any more. I'd like to take a little bit of a break.
Oh,
But I mean, I'm also like a workaholic, and I know that work is never guaranteed, even if you're always busy. So I say yes to everything as long as it makes sense, and I'm happy to do it.
wow. I mean, you've already said some answers about my next question, but my next question would be, in your opinion, what key steps or efforts are necessary to reach the level, yeah, to really play, to become such a successful musician, well, as you are, and to play with the world's greatest artists?
Um, I mean, I can tell you my steps.
Yeah.
Like I definitely have a reputation for showing up very prepared for everything. So like if I have a couple days where I'm like I need to learn a bunch of music, I'm not going to do anything for those 2 days other than just get it in my head and walk in feeling very, very comfortable. Like there's times where I've gotten brought in just to fill in for bands or fill in for a guitarist on something with a band that's been this artist band for like a while. And I feel like I walk in knowing the music better than them when they've been doing it for years. But that's just because I drill it in my head and I learn everything I can. And I'm just like, I want to walk in being like, I don't want them to even be concerned about me doing my job. Like, that's been a big thing, is like sort of being very dependable to an artist. Like Bebe Rexha and Natasha are two artists that I have a great relationship with, and um the one compliment that I get from them always is that I'm very consistent and that I'm very dependable and that they never have to worry about me. And
Oh,
that's the best thing you can hear from an artist you work for, is like, you're going to do your job and they like you as a person and you're never a worry ever. Like, it's kind of good that almost like you're not even a thought when it comes to things that need to be worked out or things that need to be worried about. Um, and just, you know, simple things like showing up on time or early. Like, if you're on time, and my whole thing is like, if you're on time, you're late. Like, you always have to be early to everything. I'm always early to everything. And I know musicians who are like, I heard a story recently about a someone that I knew who got called to like audition for like a huge gig, um, and they were running late to the audition. And when they realized, like, when they're like, I think they got a text or a call like as they were supposed to be there, and they're like, "Yo, where are you? You're supposed to be here right now." And they're like, "Sorry, I'm running late. I'll be there in about 15 minutes." And they just said, "Never mind, don't come." So things like that. It's like, you know, your first impression is the biggest thing with someone you're working with. And so your first impression should always be show up early, show up very prepared. And the biggest thing is also, your personality. Like, be someone that people want to spend a whole day with. Be someone that people want to spend 3-4 weeks with, that they don't mind sharing air with you for 3 weeks on a bus. Like, you could be the best player in the world, but if people don't really enjoy being around you, they're not going to hire you, because there's a million other great guitarists around. So
mm.
those are my key steps and my advice for doing anything in
Oh,
this
that's
industry.
so good. And I really loved it because it really shows, you need a really strong work ethic, which obviously you have. And I love that so much because, especially here in Germany, it's also a reason why we want to do this music university. There, many people here say or have that thing in their mind that musicians are like lazy, they sleep long, they only do party, like there's a really big, there are lots of
Yeah.
prejudices around it. And it's actually always the opposite. If you really want to be successful in the industry, it's so much work. It's like more than a 9 to 5 job, obviously. So I
Yeah.
really love that you really show like you need a strong work ethic, of course. And also I love that you say like relationship is everything, because that's one thing I love about the music industry so much. In comparison to other industries, I feel like the more successful you get, the nicer the people sometimes get, because that's all that matters, right? The harmony in between, like artists, producers, musicians, it's so important. And it's
Yeah.
that one industry where it's more important than anything else, relationships and good
Yeah.
harmony. So I really
Yeah.
like that.
And it's the kind of industry where, like, especially now, because there's so many incredible musicians out there, and every generation you get more and more. Like, there's kids who are like half my age who just destroy me on guitar. And I think that's great. And I think we need to evolve as people. And I love that that's existing. But, like I said earlier, like, you can be the greatest guitarist in the world, but if you're a jerk, no one wants to work with you, and they don't have to. I feel like before they used to put up with it because there weren't so many options, but now it's just there's so many out there. So I think the way I've always described it is, your talent gets you in the door and your energy keeps you there. So make
Mm.
sure that your energy is good.
I loved it, and hopefully that positive energy will spread over all industries in the world.
Yeah,
It's
and I
so
mean, it
good.
won't, sadly, but the people who do their jobs very well and are very pleasant will always be busy.
Definitely. Wow, very nice. And you also said you had like zero music education,
Oh yeah,
which kind
none.
of deletes my next question, but I have a new question for you. So
Okay, go for it.
my question is, did you have any mentors like who told you how the business works, or Did you had like any influence or like anyone who was on your side who said like, Rod, look, this is how it works, or did you figure it all out by yourself?
I kind of had to figure it all out on my own. When I first started playing, I did have a friend who taught me a lot of stuff. His name is Greg Capes, and he was like this amazing rocker guitar, and he still probably is amazing, although he probably hasn't touched his guitar in forever. But he kind of helped me just have a good attitude and really kind of was just a very positive and sort of motivating and gave me a lot of like inspiration to kind of find myself as a musician. As far as the business aspect, I really didn't, and I feel like I wish I had. I feel like it took a long time. It took a lot of getting screwed over, a lot of times of getting really undercut, poorly paid, taken advantage of for a really long time until I was like, I had to kind of just have a moment of a moment of clarity and be like, yo, this is not cool. I have a great resume. I need to start putting my foot down with getting paid what I deserve, being treated better. And then um the biggest thing for me was like honestly just reaching out to my peers, like people who were at a level that I wanted to be at or I felt like I was close to, like that were actually really good friends. I just started calling all of my friends. I was like, "Hey, I just got called for this gig. This is what they're offering me. What what are you like?" I'm a big believer in transparency with like you should be able to talk about what you're getting paid. You should be able to talk about what you're charging these artists. Um they there's like this weird stigma about where people don't like to talk about what they're getting paid. And in my opinion, the artists, managers, and tour managers don't want everyone to talk about what they're getting paid for fear of everyone saying, hey, we want more. That person's getting more. I want more. And I get that. Um, but I also feel like everyone should be sort of on the same page and know um, what is a rate that you should be charging. And I feel like, like that's one thing I would like highly encourage you to talk about when you start this university and get it off the ground is like people should talk about the business side of this music and not just the artist side and not just what you're supposed to do, but talk about, you know, what are average rates? What should you expect from an artist at this level? What should you expect from an artist at this level? Talk to other people in the crew and be like, hey, like, be candid, be very transparent, and be like, hey, like, what should I be asking for this? What should I be asking for that? And then, like, I've had certain gigs where I'm on with certain friends, and I'll negotiate a rate that I think will be like, okay, I feel good about that. And then I'll talk to my friend, and they'll be like, oh yeah, dude, I'm getting way more on the same gig as you are. And I'm just like, okay. And I'll feel like an idiot for a bit. And I'm like, good, now I know better. And then I use that moving forward. So communication is huge in that. And I feel like um, that should be encouraged to everyone. Everyone should talk about, things like that, like wage disparity in this industry and stuff like that, because everyone's kind of afraid to talk about it.
100%. And that's definitely a big part in will be a big part in our university because I also have a business degree and Jenny also comes kind of from the business path. And I've experienced also with my friends and the people I studied with in London, like we were all artists, but I realized how easy it was for, like, let's say, business people to really rip off artists. And they
Yeah.
were so quick to sign any contracts and they had zero idea of any rates or whatever. And I think that was my big benefit that I never got ripped off because I had a business background. And so for our music university, we said there's a skill we definitely want to develop, and that's entrepreneurship. Because we
Mhm.
said like musicians and artists, they need to become entrepreneurs. They need to really think of each aspect in the business,
Yeah.
marketing, negotiation, etc. So every part is kind of your enterprise, and that's what we want to focus on. So it's very good that you, mentioned that how important that is.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I think, you talk about how people are so happy to sign a contract, people are so happy to sign anything, and it's because the reason why I think the music industry is so messed up as far as like people being taken advantage of is because it's one of the few industries where people are trying to make a living off of their passion and something that
Yeah.
really means a lot to them, that's really sacred to them. You know, I I obviously can't speak for everyone and I don't like to speak in absolutes, but I can't imagine that people who go to accounting school feel the same way about accounting as people who do music for a living and write music and create art. So like when you people need to realize that if you want to do music for a living, it is a business and you have to treat it like a business, like you're saying. And that's why you say like, oh, I don't get screwed over because I'm very business minded. 90% of artists are not business minded. I'm not business minded. I've had to like get to that point because I have a family to support. I have 2 kids and a fiance, and like my family, I solely support my family playing guitar, living in LA, which is insane to even be
Yeah.
able to do that, especially with how expensive it is here. But it took a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning, a lot of getting burned, and a lot of like, oh, okay, and a lot of convincing myself that I have a lot to offer, and um, basically forcing value upon myself, being like,
Nice.
I'm way more valuable than this. I need to get to this. And it took, there's like books that my sisters like showed me where it says like people start to ask for more when they realize that they've been taken advantage of for too long. And that's like a sad reality because it's like you have to get to a breaking point to get your value. Whereas like any other industry, you're just like, you'd be like, this is what I charge. This is the going rate. This is what everyone gets. Like, you go to a restaurant and you have a chef make you a really great meal, and you're not going to be like, oh, can you do it for this instead? Or can I pay you this instead? Or, you
Mhm.
pay what you're going to get. And you're not going to pay for a meal depending on how good it is. You're just going to pay for what it is. So really, I I dream of a world where you hit up someone hits you up to work on something and you say this is my rate, and they either say I can't do that or okay, and not this whole well, can you do it for less?
It's a very good point. And to your answer, we also have a question here in the chat, which suits kind of the conversation now. Matt asks, what do you think, Rod, is the reason behind to be afraid to talk about, like, why artists don't talk about rates with their peers?
I don't. I mean, I can't obviously speak for everyone. I think maybe there's a little bit of shame in talking about it. Like I remember, um, like back when I just had a normal job and I would talk to like my supervisors and my superiors and I would be like, hey, like if you don't mind me asking, like what do you make a year working here? And people get really uncomfortable talking about money. So I think it's like a learned behavior from society where in general society does not like to talk about how much money they make.
Yes.
Um, whether it's a means of protecting themselves or keeping anonymous or I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I mean, I'll say to this day that like there's many times that I've been in a room with a bunch of people that I'm working with, or at a dinner table with people that I'm working with, and someone just brings up like pay or not being happy about how much they're getting, and I'll always be the first one to break the ice, and I'll be like, hey, this is uncomfortable. But we should all talk about how much we're making. We should all talk about how much we think we should be making. And if you find out what everyone's getting, that gives you room and leverage to negotiate a raise next year. Start working towards getting this much. Um, I also think a reason maybe why people are afraid to talk about it is because it doesn't feel good. I would imagine, like, and for me personally, because I've been in this situation, it doesn't feel good to know that people around you are getting paid way more than you for spending the same amount of time on something, because you really start to feel like, oh, is your time more valuable than mine? Is your life more valuable than mine? Because really, when you start touring and you're spending all this time with people, more than just your playing, you're selling your time. Like, as you get older, you realize, like, I was looking at this app that I have and I was like, I spent 25 days entirely on a plane, the amount of hours I spent on a plane. I spent 1 month of this year on an actual plane.
Oh,
And that's a month of my life that is gone, that I'm not going to get back. So, um, I'm totally ranting and like derailing my train of thought. But I think people are a little afraid to find out like how much people are getting. And I also think that people are afraid to rock the boat. Like I know people who get on the gig and they tell me how much they're making, and I'm like, dude, you need to charge more than that. And they're just like, I'm going to wait a bit because I'm afraid that if I ask for more, they're just going to say no and fire me and find someone else. And that's a real fear, like when you get on a gig, the last thing you want to do is lose it. So, but, I think what's made my career beneficial is the fact that I've made myself very valuable to the artists that I play with and was with them for a long time. And then I had sort of the leverage to be able to be like, hey, I've been doing this gig for a while. You really depend on me. My overhead in my life is expensive. I'm going to have to ask for a raise. And the way I word it is not like you need to give me a raise. I say I have to ask for one.
Mm-hmm.
So it puts
Nice.
it in this like non bullying way where it's like, hey, I'm at a point where I have to ask you for this. And I think they're a little more inclined to be like, okay, cool. Because if you just go up to someone and be like, yo, I need a raise, you need to pay me more, then they can just be like, screw you, I'm not doing that. But everything, and maybe you have this same mentality with your business mindset, is like so much of it is communication and psychology and the way you word things. And that is the biggest difference in negotiating and in trying to make deals work and trying to get people on your side and in favor of what you're asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Wording is everything in negotiation. And
Yeah.
I really love that you point out how important business is to become a successful musician, because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, you also used the word value a lot. And that's, I think, a very strong word, because then you start to think, wait, it's not about money, it's about my time and my value. And then it's a different
Yeah.
conversation.
But and I say this coming from a place where like I wish I was thinking this way and doing this 20 years ago, because I'd be in a much better position now in my life than I am now if I would have done it back then. It took like me, having a family and kids and being like, look, I'm getting close to my 40s and I need to like think about my future, and I think I need to think about my financial well-being. I want to have a retirement. I want to have an IRA. I want to have all this, and I can't achieve that if I'm not fighting for more money for myself. And by fighting, I don't mean fighting like, like I'm not aggressive with anything. I'm like a people pleaser, and I'm very gentle. I sugarcoat everything and I find the nicest way to say what I want to say, but I say it and it works. But, you know, at the same time, it's all about knowing when and where to do those things. Like if I meet a brand new artist and I do one gig for her where she pays me a certain amount, and the next day I'm like, hey, I'm down to do this, but you need to pay me double for the next one. Obviously, there's no reason for her to do that. You need to establish something and establish your value to them. Like you can say, I'm worth this much, but if you're not really making yourself super what's the word I'm looking for? Like if you're not making yourself a valuable asset to someone, then they don't see the sense in paying that. So a lot of times I will stick with an artist. I'll try to negotiate my rate. We'll find somewhere where we're both happy, and I'll stay there for a bit. And let's say a year goes by and I'm noticing like they're very happy with me. They can count on me. Whenever I sub at a gig, they're like, he was great, but man, I really missed you. Things like that. That's all establishing and creating value to the artist.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like, hey, I'd like to stick around, you know, can we negotiate a pay raise? They're most likely going to say yes, because you've spent enough time for them to be like, yes, this person's worth that. I want to keep them around.
Very strong, yes. And you build it up also on communication with good relationships. So that's also another key to it, definitely. Very nice. And now away from the business side, back to the fun part. I think a question that everybody wants to know, like you've been on stage with the greatest artists in the world. What were your most significant experiences that you had in your career so far?
um, I mean, there's been some really cool ones. Um, I would say in 2019, I got to perform at Kobe Bryant's memorial at the Staples Center with Beyoncé. And that was probably one of, it's weird because it was like Kobe passed away. He's an absolute legend here.
Ah,
I'm from LA, so this is like very big to anyone who lives here because he's such a big part of LA culture. And he passed away tragically in a helicopter accident. And he was good friends with
ah,
Beyonce, and Beyonce got asked to play his memorial, and so it was a very sad thing to be a part of. Like we're playing in front of his family, in front of NBA royalty, and then they sold tickets, so the Staples Center was packed. So it was this very bittersweet thing where it was like, it's amazing to be a part of this and it's an honor to be a part of this, but it's also incredibly sad. um that was one of the most moving things I've ever been a part of, where
wow,
it really felt like I'm absolutely honored to be here and to be a part of
wow,
this. That was really, really cool. Trying to think. I work a lot with an artist named Bootsy Collins. He's kind of one of my musical heroes. He was in Parliament Funkadelic, James Brown. He is an absolute like pioneer and legend in the funk genre. And I met him in an airport. We were on the same flight to Brazil. I was at Bebe Rexha,
wow.
and we were going to play Rock in Rio. And I just kind of talked to him at the gate, and he was super nice and sweet. Met his wife, met his manager. Um, he asked me, what I do, who I work with, and I told him. And so we just chatted for a bit, and then we got on the plane. And when we got off the flight, we were walking out, and we kind of walked out near the same time.
Wow.
And I went up to him and I just asked him if I could take a picture with him. And he was like, absolutely. So we took a picture together. And then he pulled me aside and he's like, hey, do you play lead guitar? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, I have a song that I need lead guitars on, but I need it like right now. Or is there any way you can record this in your hotel room here in Brazil? And I was like, yeah, I have my mobile set up with me. So I go to my hotel and I have an email from him with this track that he wants me to play on. And so I did, and he loved it. And then that made it on the record like 2 weeks later. And now I got to write a lot on his last record. I'm writing a lot on his new record coming out next month. And that's been one of the most incredible relationships ever. And it was just because I went up to him and said hi to him.
That is so cool, and it also shows how normal these people are now from
Yeah.
us, the country
It's,
people.
it's, yeah, it's so crazy. And like, like
Wow.
I get to work with a lot of artists that I truly, truly like love. Natasha Bedingfield, I was a big fan of her music way
Mm.
before I met her. And, I got recommended to her through Linda Perry and a friend of mine named Owen Barry.
I
And
love Linda Perry.
yeah, so Linda was her manager and signed her at the time. And I had just met Linda and was working with her at Sayers Club. So I met Linda there. And she came in and sang a song. And then I was playing for an artist that she was managing. And then like a week later, like crazy timing, she hit up a friend of mine to play guitar for Natasha for a show that she had coming up. And he wasn't able to do it, so he recommended me. And Linda was like, "Oh, I just met him last week. He's great. Do it." And so she connected me with Natasha. And then from day one, Natasha and I were just like this,
Wow.
and that's been like 5 years now. And she's like, we're like family at this point. Like our kids know each other, and like she FaceTimes my kids and like shows I'll bring my whole family out and we'll have dinner together. And she's one of the sweetest, nicest people in the world. And I get to play some of my favorite pop songs with her, And yeah, like that's freaking awesome. And I think another one is like I started playing with TLC in like 2019 as
Okay.
well. All these gigs like around 2018 to
Hmm.
2019 that I got them all. And that's insane. We got to play this amazing festival a couple of years back and just playing like No Scrubs and Waterfalls and all these songs that like I grew
Oh,
up obsessed with as a kid. It's really crazy full circle moments. Um Trying to think what's another really cool highlight. Um the band that made me want to play guitar was No Doubt when I was
oh,
like
really?
yeah, when I was like
Wow.
12. That was my biggest obsession. Still to this day. That album Tragic Kingdom.
Hmm.
Their guitarist Tom Dumont made me want to play guitar. He was my first guitar hero. And I got to meet him, I want to say like maybe 8 years ago. And he was super sweet. I got invited to a rehearsal of theirs. And not even a rehearsal. It was like they rented out the Forum to rehearse. So it was like a private family and friends kind of warm up rehearsal show. And I was friends with one of the guys in the band, and he introduced me to Tom. And he was the sweetest guy, and I swear I was so nervous. And I don't really get nervous meeting people because I meet a lot of crazy people all the time, but him, because he had such an impact on me, I was really nervous. And he asked for my number, and I gave him my number, and we chatted a bit here and there. And then I was playing Coachella earlier this year, and No Doubt reunited for Coachella.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were playing the same weekend. And he reached out to me before they started rehearsals. And, No Doubt hadn't done anything for a long time. And he had kind of quit playing guitar. And he had become a photographer. Like, that was sort of his passion. It still is his passion. And he reached out to me and was just like, hey, so I have some stuff coming up. It's like, I need to replace all my gear. I sold a lot of it. I haven't played in forever. And he's like, can you help me out? Like, can you introduce me to some companies you're sponsored by, and like let me know what's like the best thing to do, best things to get. And I'm sitting here sending emails to like my sponsors, introducing them to the guy who's the reason I started playing guitar. And it's just like, hey, I'm like, hey, this is my friend Tom Dumont, which I'm already like, that's crazy. And I'm like, he plays for No Doubt. He's got some stuff coming up. He's amazing. Like, you should work with him and like, get
Wow.
him on board with the company. And yeah, they all like helped him out and they were happy to do it. But like, I got to watch his show and I was like, oh wow, I connected him with that company that he's using on that stage. And I got to like, and he was like so sweet and so kind and so thankful. And I was like, this is insane that I'm watching the dude who's the reason I started playing guitar. And he's like texting me after the show being like, dude, thank you so much for helping me out with all this, man. I really appreciate you. And I'm like, that was
So
that
good.
was a crazy full circle moment for me. Like there's always crazy stuff like that happens where I'm just like, this is absolutely wild. Like, how is this my life? And yeah, I'm just grateful for those moments.
Wow, I love that. That's so cool. And talking about your like the biggest idols, you worked with definitely one of my biggest idols. Well, it was Tina Turner, it's still, but I can't ask you about her, but I can ask you about one of the other ones, which is Beyoncé, and she's
Oh
definitely
yeah,
one of, like, I would say I admire her because she is one of the greatest performers of all time. Like,
she
it's
really is.
insane. And I know there's NDA, so there's you cannot say a lot, but I'm so
Yeah.
curious how is working with her.
I don't have anything bad to say about working with her. She is very, very professional, very polite, very grateful. Like, any rehearsal, any show would always finish with like her saying thank you to everyone and being grateful for everyone. One of my favorite things about her is that she's very real, and she has like high expectations of everyone, but she also has high expectations of herself. Like, she doesn't think that she's above everyone else in the process of working on stuff. Like, we would be in a rehearsal or we'd be doing sound check or we were running something, and if she made a mistake, which was very rare, and even her mistakes like don't sound bad. Like, I'm like, everything she does sounds perfect. But even if she were to make some kind of mistake that maybe no one else would notice except for her, she would immediately goes like, guys, I'm sorry, I messed that up. Like, let's do that again. Sorry, I'll get it right this time. Like, that is so cool to see someone at her level just do something like that and be like, not try to like shift blame or be like anything. She was always very, very graceful, very tactful, and just incredible to watch and hear. I have nothing bad to say about her. And, it's been an absolute pleasure being a part of some of the records that she's put out. Like, I got to work on Cowboy Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I got to work on a record called The Lion King, The Gift, which was my favorite one of hers. And then I got to do her film Black is King. And they've all been just, it's the kind of thing where it's like, man, I'm a very small part of this amazing piece of work. And it's kind of one of my proudest achievements.
Wow, I can imagine. So cool. It's very interesting because when you say you have nothing bad to say about her, I always It's very sad actually that people expect something bad about her when they ask the question, and I experience it a lot. When people go, it's a big artist, it's one of the best in the world, or it must be something bad about them. And I'm like, maybe it's not,
Oh
maybe it's just
yeah,
they have a crazy
you
work
know,
ethic. I mean, there are definitely, but
you hear about like plenty of artists being divas and difficult to work with, but like I only speak for my experience, and my experiences with her were never difficult, so I have nothing bad to say.
yeah, no, I've heard it a lot also when her dance partners, like the last twins, they
Hmm.
also said like working with her is lifting you up because she's so on point and she's so like she wants to have the best out of everyone. And I think that's what makes her the greatest
Yeah,
artist because it's not about bringing people down, it's about putting up, yeah, bringing them up.
exactly. And I would say doing that, doing the shows that I did with her and working on those records made me a better musician for sure.
Wow, very
So
inspiring.
I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for everything that I've been a part of. Like I really don't have, I'm very, very lucky that I really don't have any bad experiences with any of the artists that I've worked with. And that's why I've been with the same artists for so long, because I get along with them great. They're awesome and they take care of me, and I'm grateful to be a part of what they do and be a part of their journey, and they feel the same way about me. So it's really nice. Like most people don't keep the same gigs for a very long time, and I've
Yeah.
kind of kept mine for very long by most musician standards. It's like no gig is your gig. Like I'll never say this is my gig or this is my gig. I'll say I've been doing it for a while. I'm currently her guitarist, but I always look at it like it's never your gig, it's just your turn. So it's just been my turn for a while, and hopefully it's still my turn for a while, and then when it's not, it's not. And but I'm grateful for it.
That's a proof of your reputation. That's why you are there where you are. Very
Thank you.
nice. But also, there's another part why you are there where you are, and that's practicing.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think one very important question, how much do you practice?
okay, you're not going to like this answer, but I never practice.
What?
But okay, here's
I
the
like
thing.
that answer actually.
I will say I never practice, which is true, but um it's a matter of what you consider practice. I never sit down and like practice scales or learn new things, which is the reason why I'm not as good as I'd like to be. But I work every day of my life, and that in itself is a form of practice. Like my playing has gotten better because I'm constantly refining and sort of adjusting the way I play to work with whatever thing I'm in. Or like my closest thing to practice is like I'll get called to work on a session or a record. And like last week, I got called to work with an artist. She's a Broadway singer. I don't listen to Broadway music. I don't know if you guys are into Broadway at all. But yeah, same. I'm just like, I respect it. It's cool. It's an art form, and it's not easy. I respect it. It's not for me. But that's how I feel about most music. But so I got called to work with this artist. Her name's Renee Elise Goldsberry. She is absolutely incredible. She's an incredible singer. She was on that show Hamilton. So she was one of the main singers on Hamilton. So she's like considered Broadway royalty. So I get sent a couple songs like demos, and they're like, hey, we want you to redo these. So I go into the studio last week with her, and I'm like listening to it, and I'm like, this stuff is crazy. I didn't know at the time who she was and what she did. All I was given was music, and I was told that she was like a Tony Award winning singer. I'm like, that's cool. So I show up, I'm going over the songs and I'm tracking them, and I kind of like, I'm doing my own interpretation of stuff, but I did spend a lot of time shedding those songs. And that's what I would consider to be practice. Like if I'm going to record a song, I'm going to sit down, play with it. I'm going to chart it out. And by chart, I don't mean like sheet music. I just mean like put the names of the chords and sort of a roadmap to be like, okay, right here, it's going to cut out. Right there, it's going to do this. I just put like little notes that be like, right here, do 3 hits, right here, do that. Where normally things would be notated and like you would be able to look at rhythms and stuff and know what's happening there. Those are my form of charts. Like I could look at a chord and know what the chord is, but I don't have anything that's showing me rhythm or notation. I just memorize all of that. So I made my own sort of chord charts for it. And like I said, that's what I consider my practice. I would sit there and I would learn the songs really well. Like my goal was to walk into the studio, and the first take that I laid down on each song, they're like, that was it. Let's just do a couple more to have options. And that's essentially what happened. The first song, I nailed it, and they were just so happy and so, you know, stoked and excited about it. And then we did a couple more just to have them different options and stuff. But as I'm walking in, she was just like, I was like, this song is really cool. I'm like, I don't listen to Broadway stuff, but this is really cool. I like the song. And she's like, oh, this was my song on Hamilton. I'm like, oh, that's kind of huge and really cool. And I'm sorry that I didn't know that. And she thought it was funny, and she was really, really sweet. But that's sort of my, like when you say practice, I say that's my form of practice, is like learning a new genre or style to sort of, I like to consider myself a chameleon as a guitarist. Like I can change colors and sounds and really sort of adapt to my musical surroundings. I try to do that very well, at least. And that, I think, is sort of, it's work, but it's also skill building to be able to sit with a different style of music and do it my own way, but still acclimate. And the biggest thing is complementing music, complementing the song. And that, in my opinion, is a big art form. So sorry, I'm going on another rant with all this,
No,
but
no,
to
all
me,
good.
that's to me, that's my form of practice. Because like when someone says, do you practice? To me, practicing, my definition of practicing is just sitting there, you know, listening to a song you've never heard and learning it note for note, and like getting all the intricacies and the minutia and everything down and being like, yeah, I nailed this down. I don't do anything like that. I don't have the time or the headspace for it. But I am constantly building skills that will help me stay busy and help me perform my job really well and keep me employed. So that is my form of practice. So I guess I'm contradicting myself. I do practice, just not in a very traditional sense.
Very nice. I know it's very important. You are always really well prepared. And I think that's probably the most important part. Just be prepared when you go to a session on
Yeah.
a gig or whatever. So that's probably the best practice that you can do. Very cool. Nice. I have two more questions. Then I would
Okay.
open up maybe some questions for attendees. But like the next questions would, my next question would be, are there any artists you haven't worked with yet, but you would like to collaborate with in the future?
Oh man, there's so many. um, yeah, I could go on forever about that. An artist that I always dreamed of playing with is Sade. I love her music
Mm.
so much. But Sade is a band. She's not like her own solo artist. So that's like they have their own unit, and I love that and I respect that. Another like kind of dream gig of mine as a kid was or not a kid, but just younger, was Paramore. I love Paramore
Oh,
so much.
nice.
I feel like I would enjoy playing that music so much. But those are all just like, oh yeah, that would be cool, but I don't see that ever happening. And if it does, cool. I think more so than anything, what I do see happening, which I'm kind of stoked about, is I'm starting to collaborate and write with artists that I really like. So there's a band that I absolutely love and have loved since I was a kid. They're called Alkaline Trio. They're like a punk band. And the singer for that band, his name is Matt Skiba. He was the singer for Blink 182 when the singer Tom DeLonge left the band for a bit. Matt joined and did a couple records, and those are my favorite Blink 182 records. And we become friends. We randomly met at a bar and started talking and hanging out. And when we started writing music together, and that's like one of the coolest experiences ever. And another band I love, like all the bands that I love and grew up with were like punk bands and rock bands. So most people don't know who they are, but to me, they're like the biggest thing in the world. Um, Another one of my favorite bands is called RX Bandits. They're down here from Orange County. And same, I become really good friends with the singer, and that dude was one of the biggest influences on me. And like yesterday we were hanging out and he's like, yo, I'm doing a solo record. Do you want to play on it? And he just opened up the sessions and I started playing on his music, like right there while we were just having lunch and hanging out. And like that to me is more impactful and cooler than playing on some of the biggest records that I've played on, because they mean so much to me.
I can
So
understand it. Yeah.
so when you ask like who are the, like some dream collaborations, they're already kind of happening, which is really cool. It's just not they're just not on this like the sort of the spectrum of like bands like artists like Beyonce or everyone else where it's just like, oh yeah, the entire world knows who they are. I'm like, that's cool. And but the people that I'm working with mean the most to me. And those are really, really fulfilling moments for sure.
It's really nice to hear. And also, I heard songwriting is becoming more and more important in your career now.
I really want to do more of that because that means less time on the road, and that sounds amazing to me. So if I can, like I write with Bebe, I write with
Mm.
Natasha, Ellie Goulding's been asking me to write with her as well. So I'm like, some of the artists that I play with, I'm starting to get into that world. Like I played on Bebe's last record, I played on Natasha put out an acoustic version of Unwritten that I produced that came out
Wow.
really cool. And now this artist Banks that I'm working with, I've been in the studio this week for her redoing some of her like, songs that she put out because she's going to put out like an acoustic record. So I got to do 3 songs on that, and I just finished that last night. So it's like, and that's cool because I'm kind of producing these versions. So it's like,
Mm.
I that's sort of the next step that I want to take. That I hope it'll just naturally happen because I'm not at a place where I can just be like, I'm done touring. I don't want to tour anymore. I need to do this, but not really have consistent work lined up for that because it's like I still need to work. So I'm hoping that I can manifest just a natural shift of like more of this comes in so I don't have time for that as opposed to I want to say no to that and make space for this and hope that it comes, you know?
Nice.
So
Very beautiful. And I'm pretty sure that everything, like all the plans you have, will be fulfilled and will come and come true. And now I come to my final question.
okay.
So you're kind of living the dream as a musician, even though you have to put in a lot of energy, as we've heard, it's like comes with a lot of work ethic, but still you're
Yeah.
living the dream as a musician for sure. And what advice do you have for aspiring musicians who want to follow your footsteps?
Um okay. My advice, especially right now because I'm seeing a lot of this and I kind of want to tell people, I want to give people unsolicited advice, but I'm afraid that it would come off as like rude or mean. So this is a perfect platform to discuss that. My biggest advice would be um make friends with everyone you can, but the biggest thing with that is like organic. Like find like, go to like a hang and meet people and just be cool. Don't come off as desperate. Don't come off as like pushy. Um Play with other people. I think one of the biggest issues right now in this world is like the world of Instagram and social media is that everyone puts all of their energy, not everyone, but a lot of people put a lot of their energy into being in a room by themselves and playing really impressive stuff and just putting it out. And that's really cool and it gets you attention and it gets eyes on you, but you're spending less time creating music and making and matching other people's energies. So when you spend too much time playing in a room by yourself, you have a hard time playing with a lot of people in a room. And that's really where, if you want to be a touring guitarist or a session guitarist, that's what you have to do. You have to be able to gel with other people and have good musical chemistry. You can't create chemistry by yourself. So that's something I implore people to do. Another thing, and like I find it really interesting, is like um I get a lot of messages from people online who are usually just like asking for advice, and I'm totally cool with that. I love talking to people. I love giving advice. But I do get hit up a lot by people who live here in LA, who I've never met, who are just like, "Hey, can we go get coffee sometime?" And um I feel like that I know that everyone really means well when they ask that, but I also feel like it is a little like I'm a little hesitant to meet a complete stranger,
Mhm.
you know? Um just as like a as like a social norm, it's a little strange to me to be like I'm going to go meet this guy I've never met before because he wants to have coffee with me. And I know the intentions are great. I'm never going to be like no. I'm just going to say, "Hey man, I'd love to, but unfortunately don't have time, which is the absolute truth. Like if I'm not working, I'm with my kids and my fiance and like being a family and making up for the time that I'm gone. But I always like suggest people like, hey, and like I don't say this, but I'm like, hey, instead of like um hitting me up to go get coffee, if you see me, if you see that I'm playing anywhere nearby or if there's anything coming on, come to that, meet me there in like a social setting with a bunch of people and let's have some FaceTime one-on-one and let's become homies. And that I'm all for. Like I have people that like if I'm in London, I'll like put a story post on my story, I'll be like, hey, I'm playing in London, and people will go there and like hit me up and be like, yo, I'm at your show, let me know if we can hang out. And that to me is the best way to do it, because I just played a show, I'm hanging out, I'm already in a social setting, you're welcome to join me and like my crew and come hang and stuff like that. But I think that's the biggest thing, is like make friends with people, make relationships. Do not, like, to me the word I hate the most is networking. I hate that word. I hate the mentality of networking. To me, it comes off as like you're looking at people like opportunities and not as people. You're looking at people like, how can you benefit me, as opposed to just like, can we be cool? Because I am going to recommend my friends for stuff, people that I trust, people that I know have good intentions, people that I know are going to respect the artist, respect their boundaries, respect the work to do. And I think good, genuine people do that. So show me that you're a good, genuine person and don't try to come off as an opportunist. So, and people could very well not be opportunists, but if they don't understand how they're coming off and they lack the self-awareness to see like, I look like I'm trying to use you, even though I'm not, that still throws people off and makes people feel like they're being used. And that's not a great feeling. And you certainly don't want to be friends with someone who comes off like they're using you, and you certainly don't want to recommend someone who feels like they're using you. And also things like, people hit me up that I don't know and they're like, hey man, let me know if you ever need a sub for a gig. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can never sub. I can never call someone to sub for me that I don't know. Like, I don't know what you're like. I don't know how you're going to be. I don't know if you're going to show up prepared. I don't know if you're going to be cool with the artist. I don't know if you're like a good hang. Like, establish a foundation with people before you ask for things like that. I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I'm just saying, let me get a good read on you as a person before we could even get to that point. So I want to just say, build friendships with people before you start. Oh, I think you froze. I just want to say, build friendships with people before you start seeking opportunities from them. Did I freeze too, or was it just Cheryl? Jenny, are you there?
Yeah, I think Sherry is frozen.
Okay. I see someone else asked a couple of questions.
Yes,
so
there are two questions
just read
in
the
the
chat.
chat.
Okay.
Sorry,
it says,
I lost
it's okay.
connection.
It's okay.
You're back.
You're back. You're back, and that's all that matters. So someone did ask a couple more questions.
Yeah, I'm very sorry, but just to come back, sorry, I just maybe lost the last 10 seconds. So it comes back to relationships and how important it is. So thanks so much for that. And yeah.
Yeah, and it's all on there recorded, so you'll be able to hear what I said. So someone asked a couple questions. I'll just read them out. It says, what do you think is the biggest challenge for artists playing their own original songs and to get rid of covers to gain money? And then the second one is, what's the reason behind your decision to play for huge artists? Do you work in the studio instead of building up your own path and maybe your own solo project and band? Okay, so first question. That's a great question. I don't feel like I can answer that because I am not really pushing to be an artist. I would guess there's a lot of challenges to being an artist, and that's exactly why I'm not an artist. I do have like my own artist project and I put my own music out, and but I just, that's on the biggest back burner behind me because I just don't have the energy and I don't want to put money into it that I'm not going to get back. Sadly. But, challenge for artists playing their own original songs. I think the biggest challenge for artists playing their own original songs is society. People in general don't want to give music a chance that they haven't already heard or hasn't been beaten into their ears. And I think sort of proof of that is like, like the biggest songs on the radios that you're hearing these days. I'll give an example, and I'm not trash talking, but let's say Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso. It's one of the biggest songs of this year, arguably, I first heard that song and I was like, oh, that's cool. And this is obviously just my personal opinion and my taste. I heard it, I was like, oh, that's cool. Kind of like the funk guitar, but nothing about that song stuck in my head the first time I heard it. Then I started seeing it played and pushed everywhere. I started seeing all my artists that I work with put it in their stories and in their cute little videos. And suddenly I'm hearing the song everywhere. And so then obviously I'm like, oh, this is a big song. But what made it a big song? Was it the fact that the song was incredible and one of the best songs I ever heard? Or was it the fact that I heard it everywhere and heard it a million times? In my opinion, it was the fact that that song was being beaten into my head constantly. I don't dislike the song. I think it's a good song. But I think it took about 20 or 30 times hearing it to be like, oh yeah, this song's huge and it's everywhere. And I know it now because I've heard it a million times. How do you, as an artist who doesn't have a huge label and marketing and millions and millions of people sharing your song everywhere, how do you get your song played to everyone 20, 30 times a day to the point where they have no choice but to remember your song because they hear it everywhere? I think that's the biggest challenge. So my advice to that is keep working on writing something that is undeniably good and catchy. My favorite thing, and this, keep in mind, like, I put myself out there as a session guitarist. I'm not a writer. I like to write, but that's not my thing yet. I want it to be. I'm not an artist. I just listen and I care about music deeply, just as we all do. But my favorite thing in the world as a listener and as someone who enjoys music, my favorite thing in the world, and it doesn't happen often enough, is when I listen to a record and I can't even get past the first 3 songs because I keep going back and listening to them over and over again. Like, that's happened maybe a handful of times in the last few years. But I am the kind of person that, like, music is like a drug to me. And like, I'll listen to one of my favorite bands and like, it'll take me months to even fully listen to and digest the entire record, because just those first 3 songs, I'm like, I have to keep going back. I can't get enough of this song. I can't get enough of this song. That doesn't happen too often to me, but that to me is so much more impactful and so much more meaningful as someone who's just consuming art than to have to hear a song 30 times on the radio and on every reel. And I don't even listen to the radio, so that doesn't even matter anymore. But like everywhere else, having to hear a song 30, 40 times for me to be like, oh yeah, it's catchy. It's stuck in my head now. So sorry for the rant, but I think that is the biggest challenge, because it's not fair that you don't have the access that these people do, and you don't have the power behind you that these people do. But that's not to take away from artists like Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan and all the huge artists right now. Like, Sabrina Carpenter has been doing this since she was like 14. She was like doing Disney Channel. She was doing YouTube. She's doing all this stuff. She's been going at it hard for a long time, and she finally got her break. And I think that's amazing. I'm so happy for her. I know people who've been working with her for the past decade, and now she's this massive thing. And I love that. I'm like, so much respect and so much praise to you for like going at it and finally getting your break. So that to me is sort of the challenge, is not having the power. Sorry, my son just walked in. This is my son, Oliver. He said hi. Okay, I'm in the middle of a meeting. And can you go to mommy? You got a balloon? He wants to show you his balloon. Look.
Oh, beautiful.
Hi.
Say hello from Germany.
He said, how are you doing? They're in Germany right now. Say hi, Germany.
Hi, Germany.
Oh, that's so
Okay.
cute. Thank
Okay,
you.
go to mommy. I'm almost done. Okay, well, you can't come to this meeting. Daddy has to be in this meeting. Go to mommy. I'll be done in a minute. Okay,
So cute.
So yeah, that's what I do think is hard. And I have friends who like recently just got signed and stuff, and all their labels are, and this is like part two answer to that first question. It's like all their labels are making them do like 45-second covers of a song, 1-minute cover of a song, and having a camera crew and having everything look very legit. But they're just like, we just want you to do covers because that's going to get you followers, that's going to get you attention. And then once you have the followers and the intention based on your covers, then you start releasing your originals, because then you're going to have an audience that's going to listen to your originals because they're already invested in you. And that's the smart business plan behind all of this. And I get it, and that works. But it just sucks that that's what you have to do, at least in this market. Because when you sign to someone, you have to do what they say, and they're the ones investing in you, and like you either do what they say or you just part ways and you're on your own again. So that's kind of the way you have to go about it, unfortunately. And that's the game that everyone's playing right now. And I have so much respect for artists, because you have to be so resilient and you have to be so determined. You have to put up with so much crap and you have to wear so many hats, and you can't just make music. You have to be a content creator. You have to be all this. I don't have it in me to be an artist. So my dream is to one day be so rich that I could afford to throw money away into my project that just makes me happy, because I don't want to expect anything from it. And that's, to me, where true art lies, but it's not really a reality in today's world. So sorry for such a long-winded answer to Matt,
All
but
good.
that was my
Very,
answer to the first question.
very inspiring. Yeah.
So part two of the question says, what's the reason behind your decision to play for huge artists, do work in the studio instead of building up your own path and maybe your own solo project band? I think I kind of answered it with that last question, is because I don't, it's, as far as my decision to play for huge artists, I will say I didn't decide, I got lucky. So I got some great opportunities and I did it and it worked. I think my entire career and my path is driven and motivated by my family. I have to make a living. I want to provide a good life for my family. And I'm so lucky and so grateful that I can do that playing guitar. Like as much as I get exhausted, as much as I get overwhelmed, as much as there's days where I just get up and I'm like, I don't even want to look at my guitar today, I still have to check myself and be grateful that I get to do this. And that's, also, in my opinion, a reflection of how unhealthy it is working in this industry. People say, if you do what you love for a living, you'll never work a day in your life. But the truth is, if you do what you love for a living, you have no problem letting it completely consume you and having no boundaries, which is very true with what we do. But we love it so much that we put up with it. Like, at the end of the day, as tired as I am of playing guitar, if I were to just say, like, I need a vacation, I need a break, I quit music, if I go buy some farm in the Bahamas and go live there because I'm so sick of this industry, after 4 or 5 days, I'm going to lose my mind. And I'm like, put me back on a plane and get me in front of a crowd or get me in a studio, because that's just what we do. It's like, imagine what your favorite thing in the world it is to do. If you find a way to do that for a living, you're going to get sick of it. That's just how it is. Anything out of moderation gets old. So, but at the end of the day, we love what we do, and I love what I do, and I can't imagine doing it anywhere else. I just wish that there was a little more I wouldn't say consistency, because I am consistently busy. I wish there was a little more security with it. And I always feel like I'm a squirrel harvesting for a winter that never comes, and it's been 10 years of harvesting, So that's that's just where I am mentally with it. Let's see, what was this other one? Which was the last album you were repeating track by track? Oh, that's a good question. I would say most recently, Hosier's Unreal Unearth. Those first 2 songs on that record, I couldn't get past them. Do Selby Part 1 and Part 2. Another one, let me see. Alkaline Trio's Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs is another one that I was beyond obsessed with. And here, I can show you right now just by pulling up my Spotify and seeing what I've been listening to lately. so much. Sleep Token. Oh, so they're like a metal band from England. That Take Me Back to Eden record is another one that's just unbelievable. Right now, I am obsessed with Zedd, Zedd. He's a DJ.
Okay.
Mostly does electronic music, but he just put a new record out, and it has like Muse, John Mayer, Remy Wolf. They even got Jeff Buckley's vocals on there somehow. And there's like, I haven't been able to listen to the whole song because I just keep listening to like that Muse, Remy Wolf, and John Mayer one. I still have to listen to the whole record, but I can't get past those 3 songs. So it happens every now and then. And like, I'm like, my fiance will tell you, I'm the kind of person that like, like I like to listen to music in the shower. I like to listen to music when I'm driving. If I'm obsessed with a song, I will listen to it on repeat for like 2 hours. And everyone around me is like, can you please stop listening to this song? And I'm just like, I can't. I need to listen to this until I don't want to anymore. And then I'll be okay.
I hear you. I'm the same.
Cool.
So
Okay,
I
so
get
Ian
so
Roa
obsessed.
asked. I'm the same way for
Next
sure.
question from
He
Ian.
says, yeah, hi Rod, any tips for learning songs for a job to achieve confidence and consistency? Yeah, I do have sort of my methods that work. I don't know if these work for everyone else, but this is what works for me. To me, music memory is like a muscle. The more you learn songs, the easier it is to learn them. When I was doing the gig at the Sayers Club where I met Cheryl, I was having to learn like a lot of songs every week. And I would get the songs maybe like a day before, sometimes even the day of. And it was really stressful. But when you do that for 6 years, that becomes normal and your brain gets used to that. So I've gotten really good at being able to retain it. And now I have certain ways of like sort of not killing myself learning stuff. So, like I'll get called for gigs where it's like, hey, you're going to play with this artist. You're not going to have any rehearsal. Here's all the songs. Learn them, show up and play them the day of the gig. That happens a lot. So what I do is like, I usually do piece by piece. I like to do, like, let's say I have to learn 12 songs for a show. I would like to spend time with 1 or 2 songs a day. So I'll like learn 2 songs that day. I'll take it really bit by bit. If you take too much, you can't retain it. So my whole process is like, if let's say I have 5 songs, I have to learn 10 songs, 5 days to learn 10 songs, I'll do 2 songs a day. I'll learn those 2 songs that one day. The next day, I'll go over those 2 songs again, learn the next 2. And the next day, go over those 4 songs, learn the next 2. So I'm slowly just retaining everything. My favorite thing to do, Ian, that I highly recommend, that works for me, hopefully it works for you too, is I always learn, or like, I'll go throughout the day learning stuff, but I will go over everything at night right before I go to sleep. I've noticed that going over music and learning it right before I go to sleep helps me remember it much better the next day. And my biggest test to myself, if I've learned a song, is I will put on AirPods or I'll like put on headphones and I'll listen to a completely different song and I'll try to remember the song that I have to play while being distracted by something else. So if I can block out everything that's happening in my head and still remember how that song goes, feel wise, everything, I'm good. And then I don't worry about it anymore.
Yes. Love it.
And these
But I
are
would
all
say,
things I found out on accident,
wow, what a smart way to practice. I would say maximum 1 more question if anyone has, because I'm aware of your time, so I don't want to
I
overstretch
didn't
it.
even realize it's already been
And
it's already been 1 hour and 20 minutes. That's so crazy. Every
just
time I do
don't
that,
want
and they're
to.
like, we're gonna be here for 1 hour. I'm like, God, I don't have anything to say for that long. And then time goes by, and I'm like, oh wow, it's already been 1 hour and 20 minutes. I'm sorry that I've been talking so much.
No, we loved it because you have so much to say and it's amazing. For me, it didn't feel at all like 1 hour and 20, but I'm just aware of your time because I don't want to overstretch it. I'm really appreciative that you
Oh, of course.
spend the time with us. So if anyone has
Yeah.
another question, then maybe we go
Also,
for 1 more.
I think I think Ian, your name sounds so familiar. I want to say I've spoken to you. I do hear my son crying in the living room. Ian, were you in London when I was playing there with Bebe? I think that was you.
Hi, Rod. It is me. Yeah. It's great to
Dude.
see you,
So I was like,
honestly.
yeah. I saw your name and I was like, I think that's the same Ian that was there. I'm so sorry we didn't get to meet, man, but so good to meet you on here.
It's good to meet you too. And honestly, these tips are amazing. I had to ask about the song because I feel like I get overwhelmed when I'm learning, 12, 14 songs for a gig with just one rehearsal. But also thank you so much for all the business side of the industry you just said, because, I am a very shy person in terms of asking for pay. And yeah, it's extremely helpful to hear from someone like you. I'm a big fan, so thank you for everything.
Dude, thank you so much, man. That really means a lot.
Oh, nice. Oh, Ian, if you're from London, we should connect. I'm more often in London because I used to live
Yeah,
there, so let's definitely connect.
So I'm moving to America literally this Friday. So, but
cool.
yeah,
Oh,
let's
nice.
connect.
Where are you going to be moving to?
I'm gonna be moving to Florida because we're gonna stay there for 1 year with my fiance. She's a musical theater actress. Then we're jumping to New York because her agent is there. So I completely relate what you said about musical theater. I don't like it, but I get enough of it being engaged to an actress.
For sure. Yeah, you're around it all the time. Well, dude, next time when you're in New York, we'll definitely have to get together when I'm there. I'm there a lot.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. This was super, super fun. I really appreciate it. I wish you guys the best with the university, and remind me the name. How do you say it in German again?
Ziegelei Academy.
Ziegelei. Yeah. The Brick House Academy. That's so cool. So nice to meet you, Jenny. Thank you, Sherilyn, for having me. And I really, really appreciate you guys having me. This is really special.
Oh, Rod,
Thank you for your time, Rod.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have to say thank you. And
next time I'm in Germany, we're gonna go get some schnitzel and some beer.
Yes, Rod, thank you so much. Like, I appreciate it, or we appreciate it so much. Really, we are grateful that you're here. And it was so good to see you after such a long time. And I will also be in LA next year, beginning of next year for holiday. So I will text you. And again, big round of applause for you, and wish you all the best, and hopefully speak and see each other soon. Thanks to everyone who joins us. This will be a podcast, so we will let you know when the podcast is online.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.